Welcome back. We are on video 6 of the Git Management XUI series. As we left off the last video, we ended up getting to a point to where I thought we were ready to delete one of our configs. Turns out we were failing right at the end. And I believe the issue is, after looking at it a little bit, you'll notice that these all have a dialog view helper specified above them for the edit delete connection info methods. I just want to make sure, hold on. Let's make sure we're in the right delete connection info, delete get config. There we go. So we don't have the right decorator for this, and that's why we're seeing issues. So we've specified a dialog view here. I'm going to do this for the others while I'm here before I forget. But we want to make sure that it knows it as a dialog view. The dialog view decorator tells it that the first time we submit, the reason it was giving us an error that said basically dictionary object has no headers is because after we returned, remember, to get the delete get config, it is going to not step into this if statement first because it's not coming through as a post first. Because it's a dialog view, I believe it submits a get. And with that, what it's going to do, it's going to come through, build all of this content, and it's going to return a dictionary that's then used to render a form. So it's telling us exactly what the issue was. The dictionary object has no attribute headers. And what that means is it was actually looking for when you return from a post on a dialog view, it's looking for an HTTP response direct, which has information like headers about a request and where it should be headed. So that's why we're seeing that error. I suspect we have this updated now. We're going to test real quick. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to save all. I'm going to go ahead and restart Apache. Wait till that completes. Come on over into CloudBolt. Refresh our page. Cross our fingers. I hope that things don't blow up in our face. All right, so we refreshed. Let's get rid of config 1. Hey, look at that. Now we have our dialog, which is warning us delete get config. This action is not reversible. We actually have some new features in the system that I believe would allow us to outline this in red. I'm not super concerned about it right now. Maybe that's something we go back and add at a later date, but I'm going to delete and then verify that this comes back successful. So we should see another dialog saying that it has been deleted once it's completed. So it says that it was deleted, meaning we're not getting any errors. Notice we're no longer seeing that here. I just want to refresh my page to be sure that when it goes back out, it's no longer seeing it. Perfect. So our delete method now works. Next thing we're going to do, remember, we're going to create 2 more dialog views, one for create. So let's start with create, and edit's going to be really similar. Except for what we're going to do with edit versus create is we're going to take in the existing configuration and pass that in as the defaults when we go to edit the action. So create new get config is going to be a little bit different. Delete was easy enough. We didn't have to create really an interactive form that we're capturing data from. But what we're going to do, like if I do create new connection info or edit connection info, notice there's a number of fields here that we show. I just want to take a look at that and see how we do it. I don't think that that's a really good example for this, but it doesn't hurt to check first. Yeah, so actually look here, we are building this out. And what we're doing here is we have where's my form? So our form is pulling in a CI form, instance equals CI. So this is the let me go back up for just a second. I'm going to look at create because that's where we need to start anyway. So, CI form is our action URL, which we're going to then use as part of the reverse to get us back to where we're headed. And our form is just an empty CI form. I think the challenge here is the CI form I think that what it's looking for input-wise is going to be, I don't know that this would allow us to do inputs into the form. So I have a different example. I can remember, I was probably create blueprint for the ARM template one. Let's just search for it. I'm in the wrong file. All right, I'm in Git management. Let's open this up for the right module. Think straight. So let's create blueprint or create ARM blueprint. There we go. Create ARM blueprint. So this is going to be a little bit different. We can see that we're declaring our action URL up above again. Form is now new blueprint form. And new blueprint form, we're importing from this ARM templates forms directory. So we can create different forms that are defined inside of a different file. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new forms.py, just like we have in Ansible automation. And we're going to leverage that to define what our form should look like for our create and edit capabilities in here. So back to Git management, I'm going to create a new Python file. This is going to be forms. I'm going to add the py extension for me. So I'm going to add it to Git. We'll take care of that later. Now that we're looking at our forms file, let's go back up to the ARM template forms. Let's start with notice on these forms, there's some methods, some common methods here. We're probably going to get rid of a bulk of this, but I want to make sure that I'm capturing a lot of it. So this C2 form works as a good base class. If we go back and look at, I just want to take a look at what this looks like. But if we look at, we go to all admin and look at the ARM templates library, we'll see what the form looks like. Maybe this is a bad base form, could be wrong, but we'll find out. So we have our ARM template library. And then from here, if we want to create an ARM template blueprint, here's what our form looks like. So I think this is exactly what we want. Basically a form that allows us to capture information. So we're going to start with that base C2 form and kind of make it look like this. But we can drive drop downs. We can pull in additional things from the system to help us make selections. Just like anywhere else in CloudBolt, we can select multiple different things. So we're going to leverage that as we get into this for the Git management XUI. Okay, so we are now back. I'm going to close my ARM template form so that I don't forget what I'm editing. You'll notice just a lot of errors out of the gate. I want to make sure that I need these before I go through importing all of these. I know I need C2 form because that's my base class. So we see it's going to start doing our imports for us. I'm also I'm going to say it's Django.forms, but I could be wrong. I don't know what forms we want to import. So I'm going to go reopen my ARM template forms. Make sure it's the same. Common.forms, C2 form. And then where is forms coming from? From Django import forms. So pretty straightforward, just from the base Django class. Okay, so we're importing forms, getting rid of those. I'm going to ignore most of this for now. CI choice, I don't care about this. This is ARM template specific. We're going to start building our fields here. So we're going to go through the names, the fields that we need to capture for this. We know what they are already because we've been working with them as we build out the object structure. We'll get to that here in just a minute. Initial, we will use this here in a minute for the edit capability. We'll come back to that. I don't want to call it new blueprint form. We already have a class called new blueprint form. I'm going to call this git config form. So it makes sense, right? That's what we're trying to create is a git config. So this is now a git config form. There we go. So now we're going to go. So if you don't know, to the best that I can explain this, this init class is what, or this init method is what a class will go through the first time that this gets created. So if I'm in my Python code and I do test equals get config form. When I first run that like this, and I'm passing in parameters here, it pulls that data in potentially as args or quargs, and can use that as part of standing up the class. So we'll build this out as we get through it. The other methods that are here in this class right now is a clean method and a save method. These allow you to define what action we're going to take. I don't really understand the clean, but we'll work through that when we get there. But save is, what do we want to do when we're trying to save this? So as part of save, what we're going to do is we're going to pull the data from the form. We're going to pass that into our add config or edit config, depending on which this is, whether we're calling an edit or not an edit. So, all right. So expanding back down. So let's get back into this. Initial, again, we're going to leave this alone for now. Yeah. This is, and I think if I recall correctly, we're going with, I'm going to think back to our arrays. So go back over to our views. Look at our, actually, it's going to be in our utilities file. What is that? Get configs. So here it's going to pull the other three things that we already know, and it's going to add the name in there. And just again, here's our structure here. So here's our name. Here's the other three components we're looking for. So those are the ones that we're going to leverage as we go in and build this out. I'm just going to paste this temporarily, and I'm going to steal type here. I do want this to be, I think, name we can constrain. I'm going to get rid of the rest of, some of these are choice fields. So what we're going to do, and this is where this starts becoming really cool, is we're going to create those drop downs in here. So I think the choice field name, we want this to be freeform. So I think this is okay. This is going to be the name of the GitHub config. Configuration, whatever. We are going to make it required. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to make this, instead of name, we're going to call this type. And then choices, I'm just going to really quickly create a static array here, and we're going to make it inbound and outbound. So that way they have the choice to make it either inbound or outbound. I also want to, and I'm going to leave this like this for now, but in time, I'm going to change this to, if we already have an inbound set, just return outbound, and that's going to be our option that we're going to select. So select a direction for the, we'll call it configuration. Something like that. We'll see. It'll complain. I think PyCharm takes care of that pretty well. So I usually just knock that down a line. And I think that ends up being part of help text as well. So. Okay, so different types of fields here. One's a character field. This is kind of free text field. We can enter in whatever we want. So name, we want to make that unique. Choice field, I think we're going to use for the other three. So I'm going to get rid of all of these other options. I don't know that I need this. So I'm going to comment this out for now and see how things work. There was a specific reason I added this in. I don't remember what it was. We're just going to remove it for the time being. Okay, so we have our name, we have our type, and the other two are going to be really similar to type. So it's going to be a repo. We're using the same type of field for the form. Here's our repo. Create our branch. I can now get rid of all of this additional stuff that I was using to help. Okay, so instead of inbound, outbound, what we want to do is here, remember, we're allowing them to pull from a repository based off of their authentication if we look at our utility spot. So we're also allowing them to select a branch once they've passed in a repository. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to you know what I'm missing here? Now that I'm realizing this, the one thing that I'm missing here is my connection. So I can't get to my repo and branch until I know my connection. So this is important. We're going to have to go back and change quite a few files. But I'm going to update my schema first, and then I can go back and update this through all of the other places that it's stored. So connection, we can't have this be the connection itself has to be I'm just trying to think through this. I think I want to store this as an ID versus the name. I don't think we allow duplicate connection info names, but what I want to do is I want to say this is connection info name or connection info, kind info ID, right? So that's what we'll call this for this particular one. We'll actually transform this some so that the end user in the UI, they're not seeing the ID, they're seeing the, and I'm going to make this, I'm going to have this be a number versus a string. It doesn't matter because we can go to pull this. It doesn't matter whether it's a string or an integer, but I think integer is just accurate. So now we need to figure out all the places we need to update that now. So connection info ID. Let's go back into our utilities. Actually, I'm going to look for all of our mentions of all of our repo. There's a lot of mentions. Let's try branch. It's going to be a little more unique. Branches for repositories. We don't have, I don't think I have something yet. Add or edit and get config. Here it is. So here's where we're doing branch. So the next thing we need to do is, I don't think we're calling this anywhere yet, which is good because we don't have to go through and update other references. We do a find in files for add or edit. Get, it's only being used once. Haven't used it yet. That's why I like to set these up once because I'm just a stickler for, actually, you know what? I'm going to put the connection info ID after branch, just that way it's ordered. So I want to update again my schema first. It doesn't really matter, but I like to keep this uniform. That way it's the same everywhere we're doing this. Should we get our comment in there and get rid of that comma? Okay, so there's our new schema. This is what it should look like. So con info ID is going to be at the end. Copy this real quick. We will pass in the connection info ID, and then we will con info ID. So now we're going to get a con info ID. The next place that we're doing anything with the config here then is add or edit get config, delete get config. Get configs. So remember, we're creating an array type of get configs for passing into our HTML template. So part of the challenge here is what we want to do is we have a config, right? We've created our config. Our config, that value is going to contain all 4 of these keys already. Then we're adding the name into the config. What I'm going to do, though, for connection info, we're going to leave it in the array. It doesn't really matter whether it's in there or not. But I do want to say config, and I want to pass in the connection info itself, not just the ID. There we go. So it's pulling it from the value. GitHub Copilot, you make my life so easy. Anyway, we're going to pull that in with the value. That's exactly what I was going to do, but I thought about it before me. It's going to get the actual connection info instance and pass it into this array before we load it into our template. So what I can do now is connection info. I can come over to my config page. I can go up to my config section at the top and maybe config name. I would say that maybe the connection info belongs here. So we're going to create another. Why I hit tab and it went away. That's weird. Okay, so table header, we don't need type, but we're going to call this now get connection. And then we're going to, instead of type being the second one here in our table, we're going to go into our config and we're going to get, instead of this, we're going to actually create a hyperlink. I like doing hyperlinks here. It makes it easy if we needed to get to that connection info for any reason. But what this will do now is we will do an href. Info. So that's how we get to our con info. I always forget. Oh, class equals. Nope, we don't want a class equals. We just want a hyperlink. And not an HTML person by any means. I don't want a button. Don't want a button. I think I just want a href equals. And the connection infos, so you'll see down here, I already have this here actually. If I want to go to the connection info, I can, maybe I don't want to edit it. I think there's another option to actually go to the connection info itself. I thought I was doing that already. So you can already see our get connections showing up, all those kinds of things. So actually, that might be something I want to do here. Is actually, you know what? I don't necessarily need to because I have the edit here. Get connection here. I don't know that I want to do a hyperlink. I'm just going to leave it. So if I tie it to my github.com connection info, we'll see that it's linked here. I think that's okay. We don't need to do an href. We could, don't need to. I don't really feel like hunting down the syntax for it right now. So let's go back up to this. Instead of an A, we're just going to leave it as a table column, and we're going to do coninfo.name. So we store our connection info. We are going to need the ID later. Again, I'm a bigger fan of getting an object from an ID than I am a name. We can use a name if need be, but it's not good practice. So we now have, we should be passing in our con info name. It should be getting in as part of our context because we're already pulling it in our utilities file where we're getting the get configs. So as we loop through each of those configs, when we get here with our config, it already has the con info added into it, and we can get to the name from the connection info. So making that pretty easy to do those kinds of things. That should be it. So let's go ahead and let's restart Apache and go back over to CloudBolt and refresh the page. We should see our get connection show up here. If actually, you know what, these don't have get connections yet because I haven't added the ID. So it may run into an error. Let's see. Con info, let's say if con info, then we want to do that. So here's just some Django template syntax. So we're going to do if config.conInfo. We're going to use this literal value, which is the name of the config info. And then I'm just going to do an end if. Do the trick, and that's just going to say if there isn't a connection info, we just want to leave it as an empty string. These templates are really kind of handy that way. The other values should all be filled in. At some point, we will have a connection info for it. Apparently, it's still set with it. Info ID. Hold on. That's because I created these objects before this all existed. Why don't we go and just update our objects then? Let's go to Launch Shell Plus. We have those 3 objects. We can't even look at them anymore, so we'll figure out what they look like here in a minute. Let's go in. So we need to get our add get config. So we're going to import it from, we have add get config there. Why not? Add get config. Oh, you know what? I changed that on our last add or edit because effectively they are the same thing. There we go. Now we can do add. Yeah, I'm going to pull in my terminology from the last one, and then I'm just going to edit this. Add or edit get config. Instead of this, maybe we say, I don't remember what my connection info ID was. Let's figure that out real quick. We could have done it through Shell Plus too, might have been a little quicker, but we're too far gone now. And then I'm looking for my GitHub. This is the one that I want. Hover there, look in the bottom left corner, we see it's number 69. Let's go to the end here. Add that in and add or edit get config. So we'll update it for config 4. Well, I don't remember which ones were left. I think we got rid of 1, so we'll update config 3. And then I think 2 was our inbound. And let's just refresh this page and see if it's working now. Hey, look at that. So now we see our get connection, type, get repository, get branch. So all of what we're looking to see now exists. And again, our get connection is actually stored as the ID, not the name, but because of the way we're passing this into our template, we're able to capture the name for that. Okay, so now that we have the connection info, try and remember what I was trying to fix in the first place. We were trying to use these files. So I don't want to go to, we're trying to get to creating a new get config, but as part of that, we need to, we were in our forms, that's where we were. Now I remember. Let's get rid of our on template forms. So we have to figure out how to get our, not type repo, so let's say, repository, branch. Select the repository sync direction configuration. That's what we want. Branch used for the configuration. To repo, get repository, get branch, inbound, outbound. So this should at least update our information in the form. I want to leave this here. I'm going to work on my drop downs here in a minute. They'll all just be inbound, outbound for now. The name of the GitHub configuration, I think 50 characters is more than enough for a name. That's plenty. Fields ID. Here's fields coming from. Don't necessarily need fields. Do I? ID field. Let's see. You know what it looks like? Might be using it for that. Let's see. Input. I'm writing the ID somewhere. I don't recall what that's for, but we'll come back to this one. I don't know that I need it. So maybe we just include that as another commented out section. We'll come back to it. Okay, so clean. We don't need environments. Actually, you know, the clean is the validation on the form. So if you notice, it's cleaning the data here. It will raise some validation errors if we're not selecting something that's allowed. I could do like regex validation in here. I don't really want to, so just make sure it's data wasn't. Yeah, so clean data is already on there. I'm not going to validate anything here. I'm going to keep this pretty straightforward. I don't care about if all capable environments. So we're just going to return self.clean data. Then if we go to our save function now, we need the ID for. Oh, this is for the blueprint ID. So we don't need the ID. I'm going to get rid of that. So ID we can get rid of. Remember our fields: name, type, repo, branch, and one additional one. Actually, I'm going to, in the form though, this is going to be in a different order. And I said I'd like to keep these uniform, but fields. So instead of branch, we're going to call this con.info. Con.info ID. Get connection, select connection to use for the configuration. All right. So name of the GitHub configuration, select the connection, then they should select the type. This should then generate drop downs here. Now I don't have the connection infos yet, but I do have a method to get them. So get connection infos. So I'm going to copy that, go over to my forms file. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna change this a little more than just getting the connection infos. There we go. I think that's kind of what I need. I'm going to tab that out. I need to import this from CUI, get management, utilities, get connection infos. Okay, so we're CI and get connection infos. This is going to return all of my connection infos. I'm then going to pass back an array of tuples. For the left-hand side is an ID, the right-hand side is a name. This should allow me, if assuming this works, to get some drop downs where the user sees the name. We're actually going to capture the ID when they select it because we don't really care about the name. So that's our connection info ID, type repo branch. Again, back down to save. So we need perfect. That's exactly what we needed. And delete the rest. So this is just storing what the user has. You don't need to do this. If ID. If not an ID, that means it's existing. If there is an ID, get rid of most of this, I'm pretty sure. And then what we can do here is on save, we can do none. We don't need anything back, right? But remember what we're doing. Forms from and then save, taking all of the action to store all of these things and all of those things. So we'll do that in just a second. Return blueprint. I'm not really entirely sure what we're doing with it, but that's okay. We will return the object when we're done with it. Tab blueprints, tab forms. Here's our forms file. So first thing we need to do is we need to create our config. So config, actually what we need to do, add or edit get config. That's exactly what we need to do. We need to import that. And then we're going to pass a name, type, repo, branch, connection info, ID. That is what I'm capturing here. Save. Now, do I need to return something? I don't know that I do. I'm just going to leave that as saved for now. Let's restart Apache. Browser. And cross our fingers. No, that's something. That's better than nothing. What do we miss? Logs aren't complaining about anything. That's a good start. I think we need to return this. So from what I can tell, there's our init. That should tell us how to load the form. Then we're going to clean, then we're going to save. The init method Doesn't really do anything else. It just declares all of those. And then clean returns the clean data, which comes from the form, and then save returns the blueprint. I don't know that it matters if I'm not returning the blueprint, because that's the blueprint object itself. Let's look at the CI form and see if it's much different. So self init, super init, clean labels. Return get connection info. Well, we can try and return the config. I don't think that's the right thing to do, though. The value required in this portion. Do not have a value dot required. So I'm going to get rid of that in mine. And we're clean. We have our save. Return here could be it. Anything can add or edit. No return. Okay, well, I'm going to pause this while I troubleshoot a little further. Okay, I'm actually going to take this offline and troubleshoot this a little more, and we'll pick this back up on the next session. So we'll see you soon. Thanks.